Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Friday Night Prepper pre-party show. We got an interesting one for you tonight. I got two guests that are going to be joining me here. Well, actually, they're already on the screen, so you can see them. You guys know them. They're mods on my channel and friends to the channel. Steve from Corsair Trainers and Wayne from Becoming Dangerous. How you guys doing tonight?
Good.
Good. Thank you for coming on. Tonight we're
good.
going to be talking about firearms, firearm safety, firearm training, things like that. The reason I wanted these guys on is you guys know, if you've been with me for a while, I don't cover a lot of firearms content on my channel. The reason for that, the main reason for that is I am not qualified to be an instructor. I'm intermediate experience with firearms. The way that I've always looked at my YouTube channel is I wanted to leave that space for people who had better qualifications than me. There's a lot of people on YouTube who will claim to be experts in this and that. And I'll be the first one to tell you here, I am not an expert in firearms or firearm training. I have some training that I've taken, but that does not make me qualified to come on here and teach you things. And really even to talk about some of it. So, there's some of it is like beyond the scope, like when we're talking about things like setting up your optics for windage and elevation. Like I could do that for my rifle. I can't explain to you how to do that for your rifle. But the two guys that I've got on here tonight, I very much respect the content that they put out and glad to have them on. As usual, please remember to be respectful to the mods and to the guests here. And no racism, no sexism. Let's have some fun. It's okay to disagree with people, of course, but articulate your point. Say why you disagree. That's all we ever ask here. And let's say hi to the chat real quick, and then we'll go ahead and get started because I know we got a few questions we want to get to. Prepper for the Ages, Scott Hummer. Gene A, thanks for coming back. Utah Mike. Sassy Gal Prepping, how are you doing tonight? Appreciate you all. Lazarus Long, thanks for joining. Bacon's good to see you, my friend. James, how are you doing? All right, and that's it so far. If you're lurking, please say hi. We're kind of a friendly group here. We're not too bad. All right, so let's go ahead and start this off. My thoughts on this and why I've been a little bit covering some firearms content recently, why I decided to make that turn and at least talk about it a little bit more on my channel was the stuff that's coming out of Sarah Adams, her intel briefs. And the first time I was exposed to this was through the Sean Ryan show. So you guys know I've done a couple of videos about this. Basically, we're talking about the sleeper cell threat that we think, or she thinks, that 1,000 Al-Qaeda or more have snuck into the country in the last 4 or 5 years ago while we had pretty porous borders. And that Wayne, I had you on before. We talked about that they've smuggled in. We know for sure that some heavy weapons have been smuggled in, including shoulder-fired missiles. What's you guys' thoughts about this? Is this a real threat? Because I know, like, as time goes on, people will look at this and will say, "Well, nothing's happened yet." But Al-Qaeda is very patient, right? Like, we know that they will take years to plan a big attack. They want a big splash. Have you guys been following this stuff, and what do you think about it?
Go ahead, Wayne.
Yeah, I've been following it, and I'm at the point to where I'm cautious, and I've stepped my level up of preparedness to meet it in case we're out. We go down to, we're kind of in a tri-state area, so to speak, in East Tennessee. So just to do most of our daily stuff, we travel to different states, or we're down in Knoxville or Johnson City. So I step my carry up and the stuff I bring in the car and what I carry on me to meet that. I don't go running around looking for terrorists around every corner.
Of course.
However, it is a credible threat, and I do believe in being cautious when there is a credible threat.
Okay.
Yeah, I absolutely believe it's a threat. Her coming out and her how do you say, qualifications or whatever. If you go through the process of trying to independently vet her, she's for reals. She's the real deal. She's not somebody that sits behind a desk and says, "Hey, here's what I think," because this is what other people said. She's one of those folks that actually, would get out there and get her boots dirty and all that good stuff. Everything I find about her says that she's the real deal. Oh yeah, there's little outliers here or there, but whatever. Yeah, I think if they can pull off some kind of October 7th stuff, they'll do it. But I think the only reason they won't like they haven't already, is because they don't want it to go back to Iran. Because the fella in charge right now will probably go blow the entire place up if they did that.
Mhm.
Can they still do it? Yeah. Can they do it anytime they want? Yeah. But I think there's internal threats and other external threats that should be up there at the same level. I mean, just look out on the streets on a daily basis. There's craziness going on all the time,
Sure.
you know, and some of them are just as organized, but they don't have the scary Al Qaeda stuff floating around with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, but like Wayne said, I'm not paranoid about it. I got stuff. I hang out. You know,
Yeah.
you still got to live life or they're winning.
I agree. And I agree with you were saying there about other threats too, including like, you know, small localized threats. We've got an active gang war here in my city. They don't like to talk about it because it's a tourist city and they don't want to drive away the money. But I can tell you, I live here. We hear gunshots multiple times a night at certain times of night. It's always the same 5 or 6 neighborhoods that are getting lit up. I work with first responders. I hear the stories, so I know what's really happening. But it does, you know, a lot of that stuff doesn't make the news. So we take some common sense approaches to things. There's, you know, we don't do certain things at certain times of day, and there's a movie theater in my area that I really like to go to, but there's a lot of problems there. So I don't go there at night. If I want to go see a movie there, I go on Sunday afternoons when there doesn't seem to be any problems. So take some common sense approaches. But when it comes to preparing for like mass violence, as I thought this out, you know, my thoughts were really, again, I agree with what you're saying there. I'm not going to sit in my home and you know, like bunker it up. Basically, I'm going to live my life, but I am going to continue to tune up like my first aid skills and work on my shooting accuracy and brush up on my firearm safety and, you know, things like always knowing what's behind your target and things like that. So Steve, I know you're a trainer. Wayne, do you also train?
I do. I take people out privately and train them. I also teach them how to work on, maintain their firearms, and I try to take at least one big course a year to keep my own skills up and to learn new skills.
Okay. Let's circle back to what kind of courses you guys would recommend for somebody who's brand new to this, right? Like, because I know there are some people who follow my channel who are like brand new to firearms, and there was, you know, I didn't get into them till later in life myself. I think I was in my 30s when I really started liking firearms and getting into it, and it was driven by necessity for me. I had a chicken farm, and I had some predators that were taking care of my chickens. So I had to handle the predators. And that's what started it for me. And I actually found out I actually like firearms. I enjoy shooting. And then I got into other things that were helped to improve my skills with that. But from a really beginner standpoint, right? Like somebody who's never touched them before, what would be like the bare bones starter that you would say, like, you're not just like, what's a good firearm to start with, but like, what's a good training to start with?
I absolutely love people that have never shot, especially if they're slightly scared of guns. They're the best people to spend training with, and it's actually the folks I try to focus on. There's a lot of groups out there that do the, you know, high speed, low drag. They'll turn you into a Navy SEAL in a weekend.
Yeah.
I don't do any of that stuff, man. I mean, I can. I've ran with that, blah blah blah. I can do that, but my focus is everyday normal folks that go, hey, I need a gun. And I don't know, when I take them out, they it's all safety and marksmanship. That's it. I mean, I literally, with brand new folks, will take a table out and put it out there and get them to, you know, dry fire some or whatever, but then fire one round and put the dang thing down and think about it, you know.
Mm.
That's kind of the whole reason I started the whole training thing, was to get the folks that have no clue and try to get them to have some clue. So if you can find somebody that's going to teach you just marksmanship and just firearm safety, if they say, you know, oh, that's okay, or no, you don't have to do that, especially when it comes to firearms, just no. I've been with, ran around with the top tier guys, and a real quick way to decide if somebody's worth training with, because that's always a question. How do I find a trainer, right? If the guy doesn't tell you to put a weapon that has a safety back on safe, I'll just leave it there. It's faster. No, that's when I was in the Marine Corps, I was with all those top tier dudes and all that, and after that, and blah blah blah. And we just did it without thinking about it because it was so ingrained in us. So you got to find somebody that takes that new person, drills the fundamentals of safety and the fundamentals of marksmanship. Because most people aren't going to spend the time. They're not going to spend the money. I've had people that, I've took them out shooting and they won't even go buy a gun after that. And I'm like, well, what's wrong with that? They're like, I don't know, And I'm like, okay, cool. I don't try to press them or whatever. Somebody says, oh, what's the first gun I should get? The one you can afford, man.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Everybody gets all wild and crazy, and I don't know. I butt heads with gun dudes because, they're like, you got to do this, that, and the other. I'm like, no, man, if the guy's got, $500, he buys a $500 gun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's make it so he can shoot it,
Right.
And those are the same guys that say, they're more scared of a guy that's got one gun and really good with it, but then they have 50 of them and they're not really good with any of them,
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's where you should start, is because that marksmanship and safety, whatever level you take it to, that rides with you the whole time. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
If somebody doesn't have like instructors they know around them or whatever, the Appleseed program from the NRA, that's really good. I've never done it, but I've talked to people that have done it. I know a couple other guys that teach, and they actually took the course just to see, and it's good. But then if somebody says, oh, I'm an NRA certified instructor, okay, take that with a grain of salt.
Mm-hmm.
I went through the course and I was scared. Yeah. I did a couple of their courses just to put it to the resume, and I was scared because some of these guys, I thought we were gonna get shot, honestly. At one point I just backed away from the line and told the dude, there was the instructor that was instructing the instructors. I just looked at him like, what the, because dude's like, hey, anyway.
Yeah.
But don't go to your cousin's buddy's friend who's gonna take the truck out on the back 40 and drop the tailgate and break out a case of beer while you're shooting.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. I don't know. You just have to go and try. That's the sad part,
Yeah. Do you think there's a risk of, like, if you learn from Bubba Cletus Jr. the third, that you're going to pick up his bad habits if he's not a trained instructor?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, some of it, the carelessness with firearms drives me nuts. Absolutely nuts. There's some people that we all know that they put out videos of them shooting, and I'll literally put in the comments, put the damn thing on safe and point it in a safe damn direction.
Right.
There's one fella that, well, him and a couple other fellas, they stopped talking to me because I would put in their comments, hey, jackass, put it on safe. If you're trying to show people what they're supposed to be doing, then do it right. And there was a couple private messages exchanged where I was like, you guys are just a bunch of fucking ass clowns. Yeah. Oops, sorry.
It's all right.
All right.
Yeah. No, I've seen YouTube videos where people are, crossing somebody that they're filming with the rifle, and they're, it's not how I was taught. I mean, I get it. Okay, maybe your finger wasn't directly on the trigger, but you still wouldn't cross them unless you absolutely had no other way to move,
Right.
Yeah.
So that's all I got on that.
What do you think, Wayne, for starters? What are some of your thoughts that come to mind? Somebody comes to you and they say, I'm brand new to firearms. What do you recommend for me?
I agree with everything Steve just said. When it comes to a first gun, I used to recommend a Beretta, or a Beretta 92 or M9. It's just a very safe, soft shooting firearm all around. But it really depends if it's an adult or if it's a child. If it's a child, I always recommend start them on a 22. If it's an adult, I recommend a 9mm pistol, something mid-size like a Glock 19. You can find those for under $400. Police trade-ins and used guns all day, and most people just have holster wear on them, especially the police guns. They only shoot 40 to 60 rounds a year at most departments. So Glock 19 is hard to beat. It'll work every time unless you have over 10,000 rounds on it. You need to start replacing parts. And they're very, the reason I don't recommend other firearms, like say a shotgun, the old adage of just get a shotgun, you'll be fine. Well, a long time ago, everyone grew up shooting shotguns. That's not the case anymore. Shooting a shotgun for hunting is completely different than using a shotgun for defensive use. Shotgun for defensive use requires a lot more training, a lot more finesse of keeping the firearm loaded. It's also very front heavy. You can't just hand it to your wife or someone in your house and expect them to hold the line and hold that gun up the whole time because of how heavy it is and the recoil is punishing. So the best bang for your buck and the most use case you'll get as far as a gun that you can carry, you can keep in your home, you can keep bedside for home defense is going to be your medium size, compact size 9mm pistol. Something like a Smith & Wesson, a Glock, a Springfield. I don't recommend SIG. I never have, not just because of current stuff going on. It's from experience working on them, and I won't get into that. But if you get a good compact 9mm pistol from a known manufacturer that makes safe guns, it's going to serve you better probably than any other firearm you'll own.
Yeah, and just I want to echo what you said there. I've heard some recent stories from very reliable sources that I'll say older SIG stuff is fantastic. I've fired it. I love the older stuff. I have some concerns about some of the newer stuff, but without going further into that, because I don't want to get a cease and desist letter here, people can go and do their own research on that. So you mentioned, Steve, Appleseed. That's actually was one of the first trainings that I did. And for those who aren't familiar with it, at the Appleseed training, it's a rifle training where they will teach you how to fire from various positions, including prone, kneeling, how to use a sling properly, how to use a sling to stabilize your rifle, which that was one of the best things I took away from that was, you know, what I thought was a proper way to use a sling. I was completely wrong. There's a correct way and a Bubba Cletus Jr. way to do it. And I was doing it the Bubba Cletus Jr. way. And it's like medium to long range shooting. So without you can do it with optics. They prefer that you don't. They prefer you do it with iron sights. So that was really good for me. And I learned a lot. Just it's like a 3-day training. All day long. You break for lunches, and during lunch breaks, they'll give you a little bit of history about the American Revolutionary War, which was really cool. They talk about the shot heard around the world and why marksmanship is important for Americans and things like that. So really, really cool training. What other ones come to mind for you guys? Or any like groups that you recommend?
Oh, I don't know. I really don't have that many. I mean, because most of the groups that you hear about or whatever, they're all the high speed, low drag dudes. And for folks starting off, that's just too much, too fast, you know? Mm-hmm. It's usually like the late second class or third class I do with somebody that we even start talking about, okay, can you move and shoot? Mm-hmm. You know, because especially with new folks, you only get so much time with them. So you got to put in a good foundation and focus on, you know, God forbid if they ever need it for reals, what they need to focus on. Mm-hmm. So we spend a lot of time just getting that first shot where you want it to go, you know? But as far as groups, yeah, most of them are all high speed, low drag. I don't know. I don't have any ones for that.
What do you think, Wayne? What if we're talking about maybe like 6 months in, year in, a person's been putting their practice in, they've done the safety trainings, they're pretty adept at the basics. What do you guys think would be the next thing?
Well, once you get the basics down, you've done some dry fire, you can maintain a 3.5, 4-inch group on paper at 3, 5, 7, and even 10 yards. It really depends on where you're at in the country. If you're in California, go to Steve and get some training, Corsair trainers. If you're up in the Northwest, check out Thunder Ranch, Clint Smith's school up there. If you're in the Southwest, there's that old school one down there. I can't think of the name right now. It'll come to me in a minute. There's, you know, if you're somewhere in the South or the Southeast, go check out Reed Hendricks at Valor Ridge. I think Reed Hendricks is one of the top 3 instructors in the country. If you're down further south in Georgia, Alabama, Florida, There's a Warrior Poet Society down there, John Lovell and his crew. There's a lot of good trainers out there. Also, anybody who is certified in the CSAT. That's Howe. What's his first name? Mr. Howe. He's a former Delta guy from Mogadishu, but he has all the law enforcement has jumped on board with his standard doing the CSAT stuff. That's really good training as well. So there's some good qualified people out there doing really good training. Just like Steve said, don't go with somebody who's going to turn you into a Navy SEAL in a day or some high-speed special operator like Pat McNamara. Not that Pat McNamara's training is bad at all. He's an excellent operator, excellent shooter and trainer. It's definitely not for somebody who's a beginner.
Right. So when I was learning, after I'd been, taking care of the raccoons and crap like that on my farm for a while, my next thing that I got into was IDPA. So for those who are not familiar with it, that's the International Defensive Pistol Association, where you compete based on time, and you gain points for accuracy, and you lose points if you're, way off target, or you hit a simulated hostage, things like that. And they put you through a course where there's cover that you use and the targets are using. Some of the targets are sometimes moving, things like that. You have to do things like, one stage of the course might say fire 2 rounds and then do a retention reload, fire 2 rounds and simulate a tap rack assess, things like that. And so I went into that like completely blind to all that stuff. I had watched a few videos, but that was it. I was lucky that the people that I was competing with were a lot of law enforcement and some ex-military guys. And so they were very, very patient with me. And, they'd show me like one thing and say, here, practice this. You're too close to the wall. You step back 3 feet, things like that. When you grab your magazine, index the finger like that. All these little details, one by one. They didn't flood me with information. They'd give me something, let me work on it. And then when they thought I had that, they'd say, hey, you want another tip? And they'd give me a little bit more. Eventually I got to like I was competing in the middle of my pack, right? So I wasn't like pro level or anything like that, but kind of in the middle of the group. So I was not definitely not the worst shot there, definitely not the best shot there, right about in the middle, which for me was a huge improvement. What do you guys think about that as not so much like IDPA, but like picking up a friend now after you've been with it for a little while that like, okay, let me show you a couple things for you to work on. When they got that, teach them a little bit more. Somebody that's experienced, either they did military stuff or, police officer that's worked in an area where, there's areas of the country where they'll never draw their gun. And then there's areas of the country where they're drawing their gun a couple times a week. What are your thoughts on something like that?
On the competition, or where it should go?
Yeah, learning through competition and training with somebody who's maybe not necessarily a professional trainer, but they're very experienced after you've got the basics.
I got to use the martial arts answer. All training's better than no training.
Okay.
The competition guys that I've seen, and sometimes the range we use, there's a couple of them, but one of them, there's a hill, and then there's those competition guys down here, and you can see several of their bays. We'll be up here at lunch watching those guys, and okay, any training's better than no training. Learning how to, weapons handling, all that good stuff, that's all good. But I don't like the part where they try to tell people they're ready for a gunfight, because when they're doing this stuff, they'll be shooting through a window, standing dead center in the window. Okay. Or there's the side of a building. They will be over here in the perfect shooting stance, shooting at a target that I guess is supposed to be part of a gunfight.
Okay.
So that those things, like I said, any training is better than no training. I did taekwondo when I was a kid. Now people say, well, I'm gonna go do taekwondo. Cool. Any training is better than no training. Yeah. As far as where I take the training or where I think it should be, I've taken kids straight out of college and had them go through doorways with me later, right? After we train them up and all that good stuff. And when I trained those people, they were to cover my 6. Does that make sense? So I'm not just saying Yes, you're all that and go out in the world. I had to train kids that I needed to cover my ass. We go from marksmanship, boom, boom, flat range. You're just standing there to just getting off the X. And you should see how many times, how it's chewing gum and walking, you know, and I go slow and I get yelled at by everybody. I don't use a timer. Everybody's like, you got to have a standard. You got to have a timer. You got to. No, because Joe, Fred, and Susie are all at different places in life. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So Joe's going to go as fast as he can, and Susie's going to be a little bit slower, or the other way around, right? So getting off the X, and then getting off the X leads to go find some cover, you know, and then and gradually work it up from there. But a lot of times it's for me, it's one thing that day or that training block. Yeah. So we're getting off the X, and then we're going to move to cover by the end of the day. So in the morning, we're getting off the X. In the afternoon, we're getting our asses to cover. Because you're putting all this stuff in there, you know?
Yeah.
Some of those competition things, yeah, those guys, man, they're fast. And it's beautiful to watch them. And I appreciate the skill, you know, just the same as I appreciate watching somebody do wushu, and they can jump up in the air and kick 5 things at once. And man, that's beautiful, right?
Yeah.
But neither one of them are ready for a fight. And my emphasis is to get folks ready for the fight they hopefully never have to have. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
in both those cases, you can be fast as hell, but if I'm standing right here, you're not getting it out.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And you don't see a lot of those things teach weapons retention. You don't see them teaching how to make that space, or emphasizing making that space to be able to draw and all that other stuff. Because the competitions, yes, there's a lot of skills to be learned. So don't take it like I'm shitting on them all the way, right?
Yeah, no, I'm not taking it that way. Yeah.
But those are competitions. That's sports. Just like jujitsu. I get on the mat and I roll around with other half-naked men. Cool. Now let me pull this knife out while you're trying to break my arm and stick you in the neck with it. You know what I mean? It's not. There's skills to be learned, but it's not a fight. If that makes sense, yeah. Well, that's my answer.
Okay. What do you think, Wayne?
There isn't anything I disagree with what Steve just said. The competition stuff, and I've shot competition when I was younger, because everyone wants to get out there and shoot fast and go as fast as they can because it's fun. It's like driving a fast car. Yeah. But the problem is defensive shooting and strategic thinking don't translate to competition. It doesn't. Some of the speed shooting skills do translate over, but like Steve was saying, you got guys running, they're standing right in the middle of doorways, leaning out in windows. And when you build up habits like that, when you train, you're going to fight the way you train. And if you get in a real defensive situation where you have to slow down and you have to think, sometimes you have to slow down and think methodically and move methodically. And then other times you have to move fast. And if you don't have the proper training of how to navigate windows, doorways, stairwells, or any kind of funnel, you're going to throw yourself right out there and silhouette yourself, and that's a bad day.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I did a training course with some folks at a church, and they had all had training before, and they all had that good, you know, let me always be in a perfect shooting stance training. And we had simunitions, and it was funny as hell, because one lady, she was very confident. And she tried to clear a doorway, and I was playing the bad guy. And when she stepped in that doorway in that perfect little stance, I put a simunition right here, and she saw it splatter on her face mask, and just was like, oh, it said words she shouldn't have said in a church, because we were training inside the church.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's another aspect we throw in there. We do as much force on force stuff as we can get done too, because then it shows you that some of that flat range stuff only goes so far. You got to, like Wayne was saying, you got to be able to think and all that. One of my proudest moments ever is I had a couple dudes that I train with all the time, and we decided to do the old OK Corral, the shootout at noon with munitions, right? Yeah. One guy's here, and I told them they had to wait till I said go, right?
Okay.
as soon as I said go, as they were drawing, they ran in opposite directions for cover. And I was like, yes, they get it. Instead of just standing out there in the street, you know? So anyway.
Well, and you know, going back to the reference to the American Revolutionary War, the British were very surprised when the colonial army had learned some new tactics from the Native Americans about not just standing in a line and taking bullets in the face, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, my instructor, I'll be politically correct. He said only rainbow people reload in the open.
Yeah. So, and you mentioned the martial arts thing earlier. The Jack Spirko from the Survival podcast on one of his episodes, this is going way back, was talking about he was doing some jiu-jitsu training, and one of the trainers was from Russia. And while they were, you know, rolling around on the ground trying to, you know, get positions and get locks and things like that, the trainer basically had a chalked up rubber knife in his gi. And while they're doing that, trying to get arm bars and neck locks, he's just like basically, you know, touching them with this and twisting it and things like that. And everybody was wearing black. At the end of it, they're all chalked up, which means like you were basically cut to death while you were trying to, you know, find these right combinations. The lesson for that was, I'm not saying jiu-jitsu is useless. I don't think that. In fact, I think it's actually a really good ground form, but there's always a counter to everything too, you know. You're wrestling around with somebody on the ground and he's got a buddy nearby, that buddy's going to come up and kick you in the head.
Yeah. Well, it's the same with firearms too. It's all great until just a little bit of pressure that having simunitions and feeling the pain. Because, you know, a lot of times people want to go train with simunitions. They put big jackets on. I tell you, it ain't cold. Take it off. Because you want them to get the welts. You want them to feel the pain. Well, the same thing with the self-defense stuff is like, okay, I like jiu-jitsu. It's groovy for competition. Mm-hmm. But then you get them on the ground. You go, okay, now here's his homeboy. And the guy that's doing the cool move. I mean, be nice, but kick him in the head a few times. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden they let go of that arm they're trying to hold on to and they try covering their head up, you know? Mm-hmm. It has its place, just like everything else, just like the IPD, whatever stuff has everything has its place. You just got to bring it all together, you know? And a lot of times people don't bring it all together. They find that one thing they like. Somebody may like distance shooting. Somebody might like just pistol shooting. Somebody likes just doing point sparring karate. Another guy may like doing jujitsu, you know? Yeah. But if you're training for real world, you got to have all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And with karate, because I've got a black belt in one form, blue belt in one form. And I remember, you know, when they're talking about sparring and you get a new person come into sparring and they're like, well, can we do the moves in karate? And everyone's answer is like, you can try, but it's very different when a person's moving in a way that's different from how you learned it in class. So it really comes down to basically like kickboxing at that point, where you're trying to get a strike in and you're trying to not get strikes on you. And if you elevate that to like lethal combat, now you're going to be going for eyes, throat, groin, things like that, which you're not going to be able to do in point sparring.
When you get in a situation where you start introducing walls, floors, and chairs, it's completely different too. You're in a 3D fight. Yep. And we used to do that a lot. We'd rent the gyms on base. Some of the gyms in the back, they got like padded aerobics rooms and stuff. And we would go in there with a rubber knife and a rubber gun. And at that point, you're introducing walls, chairs, floors. A lot of your martial arts training, other than just the muscle memory stuff, goes out the window. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think there's good stuff that comes from it if you know how to apply it, in that form matters and how to use cover, you know, how to cover up, and that you need to protect your chin and little things like that. I think but if you just go at it like, oh, okay, so my opponent's going to throw a right straight jab. I'm going to semicircle to the left, get off center line, strike to the abdomen, strike to the jaw. It never is going to work that way in a real fight. So what have you learned from it? Have you learned how to throw a strike correctly? Have you learned how to maybe slip a little bit? Have you learned how to protect your jaw, tuck your chin, things like that? Have you learned how to fall without getting the breath knocked out of you. So I think there's stuff that's useful out of it. But the way that it's taught in terms of techniques and things like that, you have to understand that that's never how it's going to be in a fight. It just doesn't happen like that.
Most of those techniques are taught with safety in mind, to not hurt the students and have them hurting each other.
Right.
I mean, you can roll with a jiu-jitsu guy and maybe have a basic understanding of wrestling. The second you pick them up 1.5 inches off the mat and just drop them on his back, not even hard, they freak out and let go of the grip. So it's a different world when you're fighting for real.
Yeah.
No, I was training with some jiu-jitsu guys one night, and I got tired of I can't do anything because these guys are just laying on me, whatever stuff, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I asked the guy that was in charge, I said, "Hey man, can I hit these fools?" He goes, "Yeah, go ahead." So, and I mean, I didn't hit him hard. I smacked him in the head, but body shots were with the hand.
Mm-hmm.
And because they thought they were slick, trying to do all their little stuff. And I just started pounding on them, and they went into freak mode, didn't know what to do, you know? And then afterwards, the guy in charge, my boss at the time, was there too. No, he didn't let us roll. They both said, "Hey, we don't ever want to fight you standing up." I was like, "All right, cool." But his students were like, "What the fuck?" You know, when I just started knocking on them, because there's no rules, you know?
Yeah.
Once you put rules in, then you're limiting it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like you said before, it's a sport and not life or death at that point.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't understand that the forms you do, the drills you do at the range, the forms you do at the training school and all that, you're supposed to be able to find that stuff in the middle of chaos. It's not like, oh, here comes a drunk dude, I'm going to do this move on him, you know, or, oh, look, here comes some guy with a gun, I'm going to draw my gun real fast and get him. You're supposed to, in the middle of things, find that. So you get all the stuff in your head, so you have answers to problems, but you have to be able to recognize the problem when it's in front of you.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like I had my youngest son out there, and I'm like, "Hey boy, here's first we talk, you know, I got other rules, but I said, here's today's rule. Everything I'm showing you works, and everything I'm showing you doesn't work. It matters when you apply it to the situation, and if it's the right answer to the problem." You know?
Well, you mentioned simunition before. The average civilian's probably not going to be able to get access to that. What's your thoughts? Both is for both of you. What's your thoughts on like paintball, airsoft, stuff like that?
Oh, airsoft works just as good. They're up there right now. I went out and bought a whole thing of airsoft because we were having issues getting simunitions when they said civilians can't get them no more and stuff like that. So we use those, make sure people got the little eye protection, all that good stuff. It does the same thing. The only thing with the simunitions is you actually get the tactile memory of putting the rounds in and changing magazines, because you don't have to do that with the airsoft stuff.
Yeah, we used to do a lot of our close quarters training with airsoft, and as long as everyone's on point, treating it seriously, it can be really good.
Are you saying there's cheaters in airsoft, Wayne? I find that hard to believe. But yeah, no, I rolled with some good dudes. A lot of them were ex-infantry and stuff, and they taught me some stuff there. And yeah, there's cheating. And there was one game I remember, I was like, everybody else is cheating, so I'm just going to cheat too. So this guy was like lighting me up, and I let him hit me about 50 times, and I'm just like plank, 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 and then finally I'm like, all right, you got me, dude. But I wasn't doing it for that. I was doing it to learn some stuff like breaching and you know, slicing the pie and things like that, and how to use windows and move as a team and that kind of stuff. So it was really fun. There's the biggest limitations I found with that is the range on the airsoft rifles, not great. Even the really expensive ones, after like, I found that like after 100 yards, they start, you know, the little BB starts doing weird things and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you can't use them for way out there. I know, especially like in Europe, they have like entire little wars they have on these big ass fields, and there's dudes with like sniper rifles that can hit out to like 100 yards and stuff.
Yeah.
But for what we're discussing, you know, just regular folks trying to get some skills, You don't need to be able to do all that with that.
All right, so let me see, just to check and see if I missed any major questions here. Somebody had mentioned about like the time and I would throw cost in there of training. I do think you mentioned both. I think both of you mentioned dry fire training before. I think once you've got your fundamentals down, your basics, dry fire training, and if you're worried about like I don't want to use my real firearm in the house for that, then you get yourself a replica airsoft one that basically functions the same way. And I did a lot of that kind of stuff. Basically drawing with my airsoft gun, changing magazines, things like that inside the house. Doesn't cost you anything other than once you made the purchase.
Yeah, there's lots of stuff out there. And I mean, if you go the extra steps, you can safely do the dry fire stuff. But I mean, literally the biggest thing you see with that is an idiot goes in his garage, drops a magazine and starts dry firing. And right now, everybody should be going, wait, you didn't say, I know I didn't say that part, because that's the part they usually forget, is to actually clear the pistol and to get that one round that goes into the kitchen, you know?
Yeah.
But honestly, if you go and you consciously say, okay, here I am in the bedroom and I've completely cleared this weapon, and now I'm going into the garage and I don't have any ammo with me, or vice versa. You do it in the garage and walk, you know, whatever room you go into is just sterile. There's no ammo in there. You can be good, but you have to make that conscious decision to do that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. So let's end with one more question, and then I want to kind of talk about what you guys got going on. What are your thoughts, both of you, on less lethal stuff for people? Maybe there's people out there are like, okay, yeah, that's all well and good, guys, but I'm really uncomfortable with firearms. I don't see myself doing that. What are your thoughts on less lethal?
Go ahead, Wayne.
Steve's gonna know more about this than I am because of his career path. Most of the less lethal that I was exposed to was CS gas and OC spray. I'm not a big fan of it. If you can get the good Fox brand OC spray, if you know someone at your gun store in law enforcement and get a hold of it, a lot of the stuff that's available to the public is really watered down and it's not that great. I'm just not a big fan of most of the less than lethal options out there, because in order to use the less than lethal, you still have to be in a situation where your life is threatened and your life is at risk. If you can get good OC spray, I do recommend that. If you can at least get the stuff that your local law enforcement is carrying, in a lot of places it's hard to even do that. But because you have to be in a life-threatening situation to use it legally in most states, it's kind of I'm not really a big fan of it for that reason.
I absolutely love less than lethals. Absolutely.
Okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely. When deployed properly, they make problems go away. They make the problem fix themselves. But also expand your concept of what's a less than lethal. A baton can be less than lethal. Lots of stuff can be less than lethal, not just the chemical sprays, you know. But I have to stress, and I hate when I hear this, and it very much upsets me. Don't buy bear spray and spray people with it. Everybody says, oh, I'm just going to get me some bear spray and I'm going to spray everybody. Look at the label on the can. It says, do not use against humans. So, you know, you guys know, because you're there when I talk about it. Talk about the before, during, and after an incident. So you can be cool and all the way from the before and during it, and you dare spray them. And at the end of it, there's that DA that says, well, on this label here, it says, and I like this person better than you, right? So don't do that. The thing with less than lethals is you have to have training, and most people aren't trained. They buy pepper spray, they throw it in their car or whatever, and they just leave it there. I mean, simple things like leaving it in the car and it gets hot and it gets cold and it gets hot and it gets cold makes the stuff not work. Wayne's right. It's diluted for civilian stuff. Yeah. But it can still work. It can still stop things from happening. You know, is it an end all be all? No, but nothing is. And if you're deploying a less than lethal, you have to be able to back it up with lethal. Does that make sense? You have to be. Lethal could be, you got a knife on you, you got a firearm, you got the skill to use these. You know what I mean? You have to be able to back it up Otherwise, if it just covered everything and worked every time, we'd all just run around with pepper spray, spraying each other, you know?
Right.
All right. So just like anything else, you gotta have training with it and stuff. You sent a note earlier about the burner launchers. I don't like those. I don't think they should be pushing them. What's his name with the big show? I can't think of his name right now. I watch him in the morning too. The talk show host dude. He's always pushing them.
Okay.
But he gets paid for that, right?
Yeah.
And the biggest reason is it looks like a gun. It looks like a gun. So
That's my problem with it too, is that if you pull that out, the other person assumes you're going to kill them. And now whether or not they were going to escalate it, now they're going to escalate it. Absolutely.
right. So on the use of force continuum, if you're here and you're just yapping at each other, right? And this person's getting a little more stupid, and then you pull something out that you perceive as a gun, they're going to deadly force.
Absolutely.
You may not be meaning to bring it there. You may be just, let me show it, right? I'll present it and I'll walk away. But little Joey Gangbanger sees you pull a gun, he pulls a gun, or his homeboy next to him
he's shooting now. Yeah.
Right. And they've instantly raised up to deadly force. So I don't like that thing. And then can everybody stop saying when you watch the fun and excitement on TV, rubber bullets? They're not rubber bullets. I get so saying that. They're not. They're foam.
What would you call them?
They're foam.
Foam.
They're foam. Yes, they're made of rubber. Even the 40 millimeter ones, they're made of rubberish stuff, but they're not rubber bullets. They're not.
Yeah.
It's not a 5.56 flying down there hitting people like people think it is. No. And do they hurt? Yes. Have I been hit by them? Oh yeah, I got scars on the back of my leg where I blew myself up trying to be a smartass. But anyway, but just like any other tool, you have to train with it. So if you're gonna buy your old lady and your daughters and everybody, every female in your family, pepper spray, take the time to go and buy the trainers that come with them. They're usually green, and buy the trainers and have them learn how to deploy it properly. Mm-hmm. And that's where you see people, oh, this didn't work or that didn't work. Okay, well, one, you've had that same pepper spray for 12 years.
Right.
Two, you have no idea how to deploy it. I can't tell you how many times I've seen folks try to deploy it and they spray it and not realizing the wind's blowing into their face. That's my biggest pet peeve, I guess, with that stuff is you hand it to mama and say, you'll be safe now. And, you know, God forbid, she's panicking, trying to deploy it. She's never trained with it. She manages to push the trigger or however you want to say it. Mm-hmm. And doesn't realize that, you know, there's a 5-mile-an-hour wind blowing into her face. Mm-hmm. Now she's pepper sprayed herself and bad guys like, hey, you made my job easier. Thanks. You know? So
just to piggyback off what Steve was saying, when anytime you use OC spray or pepper spray, it's going to get on you. It's going to get in the air around you. It's going to get on you. Like he's saying, make sure you get training. One of the biggest things that can hang you up in court is people that don't have tear ducts can get serious lifelong damage from pepper spray because they can't tear up and blink it out. That could be used against you. If you don't have the proper training, there's something called hydraulic separation, where the pepper spray itself, if you shoot a stream directly into their eyeball, it'll travel around their eyeball and disconnect the eye from inside of the head where it's connected. And that could be just as bad as shooting an innocent person as far as court goes and stuff like that. You really need to get trained on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, I believe it's hydraulic needle effect or something like that. And you know, I see guys in YouTube land, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, well, how far away should you be? Man, I'm getting right up in their eyeball with that and giving it to them. Yeah. Idiot. You're going to blind them, you know, permanently, forever, because of the spray itself coming out. Right. So just like anything else, you need training, you know?
Yeah. So let me add a couple of things to that. Some things that you guys both said, we didn't talk about, but I recommend is to get some training with somebody who can talk to you about the legal implications of using force. Because you see a lot of John Wick wannabes on YouTube, you know, saying, I'll do this, I'll do that. I'll be tried by, what's the expression? I'd rather be tried by 12 than carried by 6. Okay, I get that. I get that. But you can also still be smart about your self-defense and be wise about what happens afterwards, like you've talked about on your channel, Steve. That so I've got a lawyer in our family, and one of the things when he was talking to me about firearms, he said, "Let me show you my home defense shotgun," and it was just bare bones. All it had on it was a light, and a light you can justify, right? Because I want to know my target. But he said, what you don't want to do is putting things on here like Punisher skull stickers, kill them all. We don't call 911 in this house. These things that like people love to decorate their weapons with these things. And yeah, it looks cool. That's fine. I get it. But what's going to happen afterwards, because your firearm is going to be confiscated and there's going to be an investigation, and you're going to get some scumbag lawyer that's going to hold that up in front of the jury and say, this guy was waiting for a chance to kill somebody. He couldn't wait to murder. That was what he wanted to do. And now you're going to have a tough time explaining it, because you've got, you know, these Punisher skulls and kill them all and all this other stuff on your home defense item. You want to do that? That's fine. Don't put it on your home defense weapon. You know, use that for your competition gun or whatever. But that's thing one. Thing two, you mentioned the bear spray. I'm going to add on, people talk about other types of sprays. I would just use this that I keep to handle bugs, right? Okay, what does it say on the container? Just like Steve said, not to be used, you know, for any other purposes than to kill those bugs. You're going to have a tough time in court, right? So why wouldn't you have just made the proper choice and get either, you know, a firearm or some OC spray that was made for that purpose? So yeah, I agree with everything you guys were saying there. I'm not opposed to pepper spray, but I always tell people, just be aware that does not stop them. All it does is maybe give you a chance to get away, right? I know a girl who somebody broke into her house and she sprayed him, and guess what? All it did was piss him off. He had trouble seeing, but he still sexually assaulted her.
So just to cover that, there's a percentage of the population, amongst my many credentials, I went to the whole chemical munition school. Without boring you guys to death and taking up all day, there's a percentage of the population that it has zero effect on, just naturally. When they come out of the womb, pepper spray ain't going to do nothing to them. There's a larger percent of the population who have, for one reason or another, been incarcerated and exposed to it a whole bunch. It really don't affect them either, guys. So again, you can try it, but it's the use of force continuum. You know, I tried to verbally say something, then I used a pepper spray, then I had to karate chop them in the throat, and then I buried them in the backyard. No, anyway, it's all of that.
Tasers too. There's people who can take a taser hit and ride the lightning and still fight. And I've had clients that did that. There are, I can tell you from martial arts, there are people who can take a groin strike and keep fighting. Not me. You hit me in the groin, I'm going down. But an eye strike usually will drop most people. Is there somebody out there who could take an eye strike? I suppose if they're methed out or something like that, or PCP or something, they probably could. But an eye strike will usually do the trick. Everybody thinks a groin strike would be, you know, like that's the best option. It's a good option for many people, but there are people who can take a groin hit and keep fighting.
The thing about a groin hit too is it has to be 100% accurate. A lot of groin hits glance off the side of the inner thigh and stuff like that, and it ain't going to stop the dude.
Yeah. We had a guy, I'll finish with this and then let's do your plugs, guys. We had a guy that I trained with in martial arts that he had something neurological in his brain where he had a delayed reaction to pain. Have you guys ever seen this before?
Oh, I've seen people tolerant to pain.
Like he could, if you were striking him, he could feel, he could say, yeah, I know you're striking me. It doesn't hurt. And then like 8 minutes later, he got the full effect. And so like we would do things like, here, he'd be like, here, hit my radial nerve. And so we'd all take turns like bashing on this dude's radial nerve, and then be like, wow, that's really impressive. And then like 8 minutes into the class, we'd be doing something else, and the guy's like, oh, my arm. So we told him, you're going to be able to win a lot of fights as long as you can finish in 8 minutes or less, you know? All right. So what do we got going on? You guys have anything cool coming up? Let's do you, Steve, first.
I'm probably the least cool out of the three of us. kind of been, I didn't do a video this week. I'm just cruising, just hanging out. I'm not doing anything super exciting right now. I don't have anything superly planned. I'm building it up right now because Wayne's got all kinds of cool stuff going on, and we need to support Wayne. Yeah. I've been teaching some classes here and there. I don't put the videos up or whatever because the folks that I'm training with asked me not to. Because remember, for you guys that don't know, I'm in California, so people don't want pictures of them with guns. I know it sounds silly, but it's the reality of living behind the lines. Wolverine. Yeah, I don't have anything super going on, but you know, drum roll and give it to Wayne now. He's got all kinds of cool stuff going on.
All right, go ahead, Wayne.
Well, I don't have any cool stuff going on like that. I'm kind of retired from training people and gunsmithing at this point, besides little things here and there. But I've been focusing on getting some books out. I'm working on a novel called The Golden Axe. I'm halfway through. I'm working on a novella, which is probably about 6 weeks maybe out. It's the novella is kind of a modern take off The Most Dangerous Game. The guy goes down a plain Canadian wilderness and he's being hunted by a if you're familiar with the siege of Sarajevo and the Olympic sportsmen, the Olympic sharpshooters that became snipers on both sides of the war that were hunting each other. It's the antagonist is one of those guys, and during Sarajevo, they were taking rich businessmen out from different parts of the world and actually hunting people and shooting civilians, and all that history ties into that book and the antagonist. So I think it'll be an interesting twist and interesting background to that story. The Golden Axe is an action adventure thriller. If you like Jack Carr and James Rollins and those kind of books, you'll like The Golden Axe. And I have a short story series that I'm starting to release tonight. The premiere is 9:30 on Wayne Grove's Books YouTube channel. And it's like a prequel to The Golden Axe, 15 years prior to the novel, about the characters while they were still in the military, and it kind of introduces them in the world.
And for folks that are watching here, I'm going to go ahead and put that link. It's already in the description. I did that. So you can go in there and you can check out Wayne's. Let me see if I can get this put on here. I know it's a lot of letters. You can go in the description and click on that link to go to the premiere. What time is that starting again?
9:30 Eastern.
9:30. And also scrolling along the bottom there, you can see I've got both Steve and Wayne's channels, and they're also linked in the description as well. So please go ahead and check out their content. Both these guys put out really awesome stuff, and they've been good friends to my channel. So I strongly encourage you to go give them some support. And Steve usually goes live on, what is it, Mondays at 12 Eastern for me. So I guess 9 a.m. for Californians.
Yeah, 9 a.m. for me.
Okay. And also sometimes you're live on Saturday nights as well, right?
Yeah, I break the YouTube rule and I put family before YouTube. So if we're doing something that Saturday night, I won't be there. If we're not doing anything, I'm there on Saturday nights.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys both. I really appreciate you coming on and helping me out and answering some of my questions. I'm sure you've answered a lot of questions for people in the audience, and always appreciate the knowledge that you share with the communities. So you guys know you're always welcome. Steve, you were on here before when we did the prison survival thing. Yeah. And Wayne, you were on here, I think, when we did the aliens thing, and also when I had you back when we did the when we were talking about the missiles that got smuggled into the country. So you guys, I really appreciate the support you've given me here. It means a lot.
No, I appreciate you coming over our channels too and hanging out.
Thank you, Sarge. You've supported us and had us on, and I really appreciate it as well.
My pleasure. I learned a lot from you guys. For the rest of you guys, thank you, audience, for checking us all out. And I hope you all have a great Friday. Enjoy your family. If you're anywhere near me, it's going to probably be too hot to do too much outside stuff. So just do what you can. Try to stay cool. And we will see you next time. This is Corsair Trainers, Becoming Dangerous, and Prepping with Sarge. Keep planting your seeds. Keep stacking your silver. I will see you next week. Bye-bye. Thanks, everybody.